And for all you novice tweeters out there, there were so many tweetable lines there that could have got the conversation zipping around the country, except I can't talk and tweet at the same time. I'll now introduce our next speaker, and one I'm definitely excited to hear from. Be sure to keep those tweets coming in if you have some questions. A former farm boy from the New South Wales Central Tablelands, our next speaker is probably best known to most of you as a chef, restaurateur and TV personality. In the Landline office, there are a few of us who are mad keen cooks. We watch MasterChef, give each other cookbooks for birthdays and Christmas and read food magazines and drive the boss mad. Matt Moran in our office is what we call a ripper. His weekly newspaper articles are ones that are so good, we rip them. We rip them out for scrapbooks. Some chefs you read and you go, oh yeah, that looks interesting, but you don't rip. Matt, we read him and we go, I have to do that. He's a ripper, and he's usually the first thing we talk about on Monday morning. He's incredibly passionate about seasonality and local produce, and he understands the link between responsible land management and top quality produce. And he's among an increasing number of chefs making direct connections with producers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Moran to the stage.
I've got this on too, or no? Bit of both. How are you? Geez, there's enough of you, isn't there? Thank God I'm not cooking you breakfast. You probably think I wish he was, but... Hi, guys. You probably know me as the chef, the restaurateur, or possibly every now and then on TV. I'm not here to talk about climate change or social science. I'll leave that to the experts. I hope there are some experts talking after me, because if you've got another 4 chefs talking, it's going to be very boring after a while. I'm here basically to tell you my story. From the farm, you know, I was born on the land, and then I became the chef, and then I'm sort of going back to the land at the same time, or should I say in the kitchen. I have amazing passion for Australian produce, and ideally, you know, I love the farmers, and I'd prefer that people actually bought directly off them. 4th generation farm boy, that's what I consider myself, apart from a chef. My father was born in the Central Tablelands in a little town called Oberon, or Black Springs. The family farm was in the family for 100 years. I think they got it in late 1850s, and they sold it in 1960. Someone's phone just went off. We have a rule actually in the kitchen. If phones go off, we put them in the deep fryers. You might think I'm joking. Unless it's mine, of course, I'm the boss. They all curl up after, anyway, we won't go into that. So anyway, Dad was born in Oberon, lived on the land his whole life, and basically I was born in Tamworth, which is northern New South Wales. We had a sheep farm and a few cattle. We left that when I was 5, and I went to a dairy farm in Badgerys Creek. We were dairy farmers up until I was about 9 or 10, I think it might have been. And it was pretty tough in those days. We actually moved off the farm, so first time in 5 generations. And I grew up and did my schooling in the western suburbs of Sydney in a place called Blacktown. I don't know where any of you guys are from Sydney, but Blacktown's west of Sydney. It's a pretty rough area, probably rougher then than what it is now. Dad bought a little farm when I was about 13, 500 acres, and we went back there every weekend. He made us go back there every weekend and work, you know, crutching sheep and marking lambs and doing all the things that teenage boys didn't want to do. I suppose he sort of put a very big work ethic in my brother and I, so which, you know, probably paid off a little bit later down the track. I left school when I was 15. I had an agreement with school. They hated me, I hated them, so we broke up. I don't have one of those amazing, beautiful, you know, stories, romantic stories about how my mother was this amazing cook and my grandmother was amazing. I hope none of you know my mother, by the way. In our household, it was pretty much a piece of protein and 3 vegetables. I thought I didn't like seafood until I was 15 because I'd actually never really eaten it. The suburbs and in the country, the closest we got to fresh fish was a fish finger. True story. And it was quite weird because a lot of 15-year-old boys from Blacktown never became cooks. I had an interest in butchery. My family and my ancestors, there was a bit of butchery. And obviously growing up in the land, we used to kill our own lambs too. So, and then I thought I might be a pastry chef. You know, I thought being a pastry chef would be really cool. I could start really early and be finished by midday. I kind of compromised and I started working in an RSL in Sydney, Parramatta RSL, just as a washer-upper, and I used to run and grab the meat from the cool room for the head chef. Thought one day if I could, get to the deep fry section, I'd be pretty bloody happy. Dad wouldn't let me leave school until I found a job, so I started desperately looking for an apprenticeship. I think I went for about 20 interviews. I remember going to one place, the Harbour Watch restaurant in Sydney, and the chef said to me, he said, look, if the first 8 don't work out, I'll give you a call. Somehow I got a job, and it was one of the top restaurants in Sydney, a place called La Berheline on the North Shore, which was in 1985. Very sort of French and very disciplined. We were working 6 days a week and up to 90 hours a week, which was great for a 15-year-old kid because I was probably a bit naughty at that point in time. Restaurateur. Now, I left La Belle after 5 years, went and worked for some other high-profile chefs, and in 91 decided that I didn't want to work for anybody anymore. I was 22. I met my partner at La Berheline, Peter Sullivan, and he, a business partner by the way, he was looking to do something himself. He was a little bit older than me. We bought a bistro in Paddington called Paddington and Bistro in 91. It did incredibly well. We got lots of accolades. We won chef's hats and bits and pieces. I remember when we first opened it, after 3 months, Peter and I decided we wanted to do everything. I'd do the flowers at the markets. I'd go to the markets. I'd cook all day. Pete was front of house. And we decided that we'd do our own books. Big mistake. I remember after sitting there one day after 3 months thinking, this is so easy. We have so much money in the bank. But not realising we hadn't paid anybody. We ended up surrounding ourselves with people that were obviously better than us when it came to that. Stayed there, sold that in 95, opened another restaurant in Potts Point called Moran's, and had that for quite a few years. I had another place in Darlinghurst called Bon Femme. I met a guy who was a rock star, probably one of the biggest bands in the world that I became mates with, and he wanted to open a restaurant and put all his money into it. And for somehow I agreed to it, and we had it in Sydney. It was a basement. It's now a fantastic strip joint, by the way. It didn't work. We are still great mates, but having a restaurant with a rock star and all his mates coming in and no one ever paid, it didn't work. In 99, I was shown a site down at Circular Quay called the Toaster Building. Everybody was against it. No one wanted it built. In fact, most of the people that actually were complaining about it then now live in it. That's the true story too. It was controversial because everyone didn't want it to be built in the first place. I went down there and I saw this amazing site and fell in love with it. And I thought, if a restaurant can't work there, it won't work anywhere. The developer were very keen to get us. We signed a massive lease, which I've since now bought the building, thank God, because it means that I'm there forever. And that was Aria Restaurant. We had that we've still got that, I should say. And then we started to expand. From Aria, we opened Opera Bar, which is down at Circular Quay. Took over the catering in the Opera House. I opened Aria Brisbane. I did Chiswick in Willara, North Bondi Fish at Bondi. Opened another bar in Brisbane called River Bar and Kitchen. There's another one. The Art Gallery New South Wales. I have a restaurant and a cafe in there. And we just announced last week Barangaroo, which is probably the most exciting thing I've done. It's a 3-level building right on the water in the new development. with 3 different offerings and over 1,600 square metres. So we're very excited. It won't open until March 2016. I can honestly say it really wasn't about building a massive empire. You know, we have over 600 staff now, and we're over $100 million turnover a year. It's more about just the love of opening restaurants. I know that's hard to believe, but it really is. We're just developing Barangaroo at the moment and coming up with concepts. Concepts are changing all the time, but just the joy and the fun that we're having doing it, it's pretty amazing. Camera, TV, how I got into that. 10 years ago, I was asked to join a show called My Restaurant Rules and asked what the premise of it was. And they basically said, we're going to give a restaurant to 5 couples around Australia and let them fight it out, and the winner will actually get to keep the restaurant. And I went, oh, well, they're chefs and restaurateurs. They're like, no, they've never worked in the industry before. I basically told them how stupid they were and the show wouldn't work, hence why they wanted me even more. I did that for a couple of years. I did Heat in the Kitchen, the chopping block. I did 3 years of MasterChef and mentoring on that. And then 2012, I kind of realised that I wasn't loving it like I used to. You know, I'm forever grateful for what MasterChef and those shows did for me. Obviously, I wouldn't be in the position I am now by having my own show. But, you know, I got sick of judging people that can't cook. Well, they eventually did, you know, and learnt as they went along. Oh, gosh, that's too controversial. In 2012, while I was still on MasterChef, I realised that, you know, my time was up. One, they were paying me way too much money, and two, you know, I just wasn't really enjoying it anymore. So I went to ITV, which is a big, you know, multinational TV guys, and said that I've come up with this great concept. And the concept is paddock to plate. We went and then sold it to Foxtel, which was quite interesting, trying to sell it to them. And they said, what's the premise of the show? And I said, well, you let me travel around Australia, pay me a lot of money, and I'll meet my new suppliers that I'm going to use in the restaurant. And by the way, you can film that, and then we'll put it on TV. And they jumped at the opportunity. So I'll get back to a little bit about that later on. Brings me to great produce. As a chef, there's nothing more important than fresh, locally grown produce. And there's no question whatsoever, Australia has the best. Food is only as good as the produce you're using. For me as a chef, it's so much better to have great produce to work with and put it on a plate. If I've got something that's pretty average, to try and get it beautiful on a plate is going to be much harder. So you're way in front of the 8 ball when you've got great stuff. I remember when I first started cooking, you know, I think at La Belle it was very French. It was all about technique. It wasn't so much about what you were actually putting on the plate or the produce. It was all about, you know, how beautiful you made that quenelle or that souffle or that terrine, or how perfectly you cooked that meat. It wasn't so much about the actual ingredient. And I think in the early 90s, that's when it all started to change. You know, people like, you won't know these guys, John Sussman and Barry McDonald. John Sussman was a fishmonger, Barry McDonald was a fruit purveyor. The Prahariches, which owned Vic's Meats, they started going out there and finding all this incredible new produce for us. If you look 20 years ago, you know, when you opened your salad crisper, you know, you had an iceberg lettuce. Not that there's anything wrong with iceberg lettuce. I love it. You know, and then a couple of years later, there was, you know, a cos lettuce, and we went, wow, you know, 2 different varieties of lettuces. Now, seriously, how many different varieties of lettuces are there? It's just come so far in the last 20 years, this amazing, amazing produce. I'm a big believer in seasonality. You know, gone are the days in my restaurants when, you know, asparagus is in season and it goes out of season. We start buying it from Chile or Peru or America. It's banned. You know, I think the important part of seasonality is we should be incredibly thankful when we've got it. And then when we don't, we should be thinking how lucky and how, you know, exciting it is to get it back. I remember many years ago, and this is just one example, you know, we first started getting Atlantic salmon into Sydney. And it was like for a 6-week period. And then we started getting it for a 6-week period the year after. And then it became 3 months. And then, 6 months. And now you can just, get it whenever you want. There was something nice about having that sort of, coming in and getting very, very excited. Closing the gap between the farmers and the consumers. I think it's a big plus. I think what's happening now is farming is, as we all know, is a massive sector of the economy. It contributes to social, economic, environmental, sustainability, and we do need to care about it. We need to care about it a lot more than what we do now. I think the people that I have in the restaurants need to care about it a lot more. We need to educate people more about how tough the farmer does it, how hard the farmer works. The city consumer, I suppose, in many ways is a little bit removed from the process, behind the food. But they're also starting to care a lot more to a certain extent. There's a much more stronger market for sustainable food. I was at an event the other week and there was a documentary being made on sustainable fish and how important it is. Patagonian toothfish, I don't know whether you've ever heard about this new fish that we're getting. And there was a flood in the market about 2 months ago, and it was 6 tonne was dumped from Argentina that no one really knew about it and competing with the Australian stuff. And when you'd ask where it came from, no one seemed to know where it was, and there was a big hoo-ha in my industry and it really blew up. People want to know, I think more so now than before, by looking at brands on menus, who's growing their food, how it's killed, how it's nurtured, what it's grown in, what soil it's grown in, and whereabouts. If you look at any menu nowadays in a top restaurant, it won't just say pork belly. It'll say Bangalore pork belly or White Rocks veal or Carnarvon tomatoes or bananas or whatever it is. I think by branding it, it makes people remember it, so then they know, that produce is going to be good, every time they buy it. So, I was in Carnarvon filming Paddock to Plate a couple of months ago, and they've got these tiny little bananas they call the lunchbox banana. So they fit in lunchboxes for the kids. And all of WA and Perth know these lunchbox bananas, and they know that they're from Carnarvon, which I think is more and more important. It's not a fad either. It's a reality. People do want to know where it's all coming from. Paddock to Plate. What can I say about Paddock to Plate? One, it's a great love, but the amount of farmers that I met along the way, and how they have diversified over the years a lot more. I was in WA filming White Rocks veal, and he's a dairy farmer, but because it's so tough, just being a dairy farmer, he's now producing his own veal, and it's the premier veal in Australia. And that's what I saw. I don't want to just talk about dairy farmers because, my family was one, but, I think in one area there was 69 dairy farmers 100 years ago, and there's, like 4 or 5 left, and how much tougher they've done it than everybody else. The $1 litre of milk is not a great thing for us. It might be great for the consumer for a little while, but what it's doing to the country and what it's doing to the farmers is insane. And that's what I found along the way. There were so many farmers diversifying. There was a farmer that I met in Byron Bay, and it was something like 6 generations had this block of land above Byron Bay called Haters Hill. And it ended up to a lady, and she had 3 sons. Maybe 50 years ago that farm would have fed 3 families, but 400 acres in Byron Bay is probably pretty tough. Her 3 sons, one became a vet, the other 2 are working the land. One does chickens and eggs, the other one does cattle and pigs, and he's also a butcher. So they go to the growers' markets every weekend. One brother sells his eggs. He then sells the chickens that when they stop laying eggs, they pluck them and sell them as boilers. Tough as old boots, but make a great soup. The other guy with his cattle, he wasn't selling them to market or his pigs. He was breaking them down himself. He was making sausages, and he was just selling it all at the growers' markets, and that's how he's made his living. So that had changed from probably 30 years ago, where it was just, you know, dairy cattle up there then. So you're finding a lot more people diversifying. You know, what I wanted to bring to the viewers and Paddock to Plate is, you know, obviously showcasing the producers and what they do and, you know, their struggles, but also, you know, what to cook with it. And that's the great thing about the show for me, is it's meeting these amazing, incredible, passionate people, but at the end of it I get to use their wares and make something out of it. Farmers markets, I think it's a massive link. You know, I think more people should be doing farmers markets, more people should be going to farmers markets. You know, I've always said that, you know, going to the farmers markets and buying from the person that actually produces it and knowing a little bit about the history of it, the story of whatever you're buying, makes it better to taste. I don't know why. It just, you know, maybe it's the romance for me, I'm not sure, but it just, if you buy a piece of meat from someone who's, you know, bred it and butchered it and then sold it to you and told you, you know, what he feeds them and, you know, how beautiful they were before he killed them and whatever else, you know, it tastes better. You know, even on my farm, now I have a farm. My dad, that little place that I told you about, that Dad bought back and made us go back every weekend, he decided one day that he was sick of the city, so he went and moved there. About 12 years ago, I had a little bit more money and I saw Dad working his fingers to the bone. Didn't have anyone working for him, so I made him sell it and we bought a much bigger place. We moved back to the Central Tablelands, so we've got a place at Rockley, which is near Oberon, and we produce our own lambs. We run about 5,000, we produce about 5,000 fat lambs a year, all second cross. We've got a couple of hundred head of cattle. We sort of change every now and then. We've got Black Angus at the moment, we've had Red Angus, we've had Murray Greys. We just bought 8 belted Galloways only recently, miniature belted Galloways. One, because they're incredibly cute. And it's quite funny because Dad's named them all with a name starting with G. So we've got Gertrude and Gavin and Gary, and I suppose when we're eating we know what they are. Guys, most of you are farmers, aren't you? We're actually putting in some oak trees with some truffles. So we're going to put 5 acres of truffles. And we're just about to get our first delivery of rare breed pigs. If you don't know what a rare breed pigs are, they're the really big, fat, tasty ones. And I'll just sell them back in through the restaurants as specials. I can't remember where I was now. Yes, so the farm. So the farm is very important to me. You know, it's very important to my kids. You know, I love it. It's something that I probably might go back to one day and spend a lot more time. But you know, it's one of those experiences I think every kid, you know, loves. You know, and the history and the memories of me growing up on the land were very important. I have a son who's 13 now. You know, every holidays he goes to the farm. He loves it so much. My dad always says to me, you know, it's the time I want to spend with him that I never spent with you, because he was obviously working, you know, when we were growing up so hard. I've got a phone here. I just want to know the time. How short are we? 5 minutes. All right, so I can sum it up and then we'll do a Q&A. Guys, I want to thank you for having me. Before I pass it back to Pip, I just want to wind up by saying that I really believe that we can make a change. Moving forward, I think more and more people are interested in where our food is coming from and where it's going. And I think the movement here is to stay, there's no question. And that's not just coming from a chef, but that's also coming from a farmer. So Pip, do you want to come up and we'll do a Q&A? Are there any questions? No? Great. Thank you very much. Oh, that was quick. Prime lamb? Prime lamb. Is that right? Fat is out. Why do you say that? Prime. Yeah. Do you know why you say that? I know why you're saying that, because you think that people don't like the word fat. In my world, fat is flavour. If you don't have fat, you don't have flavour. You do have fat on a prime lamb. I'm going to argue until the
thing,
cows come
different
home. You know, it's quite funny every now and then, and I love it, you know, and more so at our area because it is fine dining. You know, someone will send their lamb back and go, it's too fatty. And we say, you know what, well, we don't go out and challenge them. I'd like to. We really do it. We take the fat off and send it back out. But, you know, my theory is, you know, we breed fat lambs, not skinny lambs. And I always say, you know, whenever I can in a public domain, if you don't like fat, just cut it off and leave it on the plate. But my grandmother, you know, God bless her, not the best cook in the world. You know, I just remember, she lived till 99 actually, she only died 2 years ago. And she would just eat the fat off the lamb, like just all the time. And, you know, I suppose they're saying now that it's healthier than ever. I have to say though, when she did cook a leg of lamb, I think she put it on 3 days before I got there. And then would comment on it, how amazing it was. And I used to think it's so overcooked and dry. And she also put the Brussels sprouts on at the same time.
Oh no. It's child abuse. Do you want to sit down
Child
and
abuse?
have a
Are we
chat?
going to sit down? Yeah.
Okay.
She did make the best date scones, however. And for the life of me, for many, many years, she never had a recipe. She used to do it by hand. And I used to watch her and then I'd try and make them myself. And they just never, ever turned out.
Oh, you've never cracked the secret?
No, never cracked the secret.
No. Well, we've had some Twitter questions, which we'll come to in a tick, but I was wondering, in terms of closing the gap between farmers and consumers, do you see that as something that you can actually do in a restaurant through the little notes on a menu and the backstories? Or
yeah, I think so.
You can't have an essay on the menu, but
no,
what can you do?
But we, for one, on our front menu page, we acknowledge, you know, our suppliers. And, you know, there's nothing more than a producer loves to see their name or their farm or what they're producing on a fine dining menu. You know, when I said White Rocks veal, whenever we use veal, we use White Rocks. We won't just say veal. We'll actually explain where it comes from. The waiters are all briefed, you know, on where things come from. We have tastings in all our places all the time, so they know what it tastes like. So then they can actually explain to the customer, punters we call them, you know, where it comes from and you know, how it's done and how it's bred and how it's looked after. I think it's really important. And I think it is closing. It's closing a lot more now than what it used to be. There's no question. In my world, I'm part of the Produce Awards, the Delicious Produce Awards. I'm one of the head judges. And I've been doing it for 10 years. And the changes in those 10 years, not only just the amazing product, but, you know, the brands, you know, that come in. It's all about the brands.
Mm-hmm. I did a story on Tasmanian lamb being sold in Queensland recently, and they flew the butchers from Queensland down to Tasmania. There's 6 butchers with 120 plus years of experience. Not one of them had seen a lamb alive in a paddock before. And they were going, what's that big metal thing? That's a centre pivot. What are they eating? That's a legume crop. Oh, right. Now how often would you come across a chef who wouldn't know
it's tragic.
That sort of stuff?
And it's funny you said that. You know, during the filming of Paddock to Plate, we were in the Barossa, and we went to a Red Angus farm. And my sidekick, you know, who organised all the food while I was out filming, doing the story, she bought half a side of, you know, of a steer. And I said to her, we don't need that. She goes, I just thought it'd be great, you know, hanging in the back. And I said, well, you know, we've bought it. You know, the production's bought it and we can't throw it out. And we were staying in a hotel down the road, which also had a convention centre attached to it. And I said, look, you know what? Just let's take the hind quarter. I'll take it back and I'll butcher it and I'll get the primals and let's have a barbecue with the crew. There's 12 of us in the crew. And the leg meat, you know, I can cut up and I can give it to the convention centre and they can, you know, cook up a casserole, cassoulet, or whatever they want for their staff. And we asked them if I could come and break it down. And there was 8 chefs in the kitchen that day. And I started breaking it down. And my guys had never seen, you know, a carcass being broken down before. But I look around and all 8 of them are standing there. And most of them all qualified. Not one of them had ever broken down a carcass. And they didn't know where the cuts were coming from. all they get is these boxes, you know, hand delivered to them, cryovac, told them what it is, and not actually knowing, which was really, really surprising. Because I remember when I was an apprentice, you know, we were taught that. We had whole carcasses in college. It was a long time ago. It was 30 years ago. So I started cooking when I was 5, by the way.
So should farmers be asking chefs out onto their
Absolutely.
farms? Because then they can ask questions about land care and understand that that's important and back them. And
that's happening a lot more, I think, too. You know, I know all the guys I buy my meat off, you know, whether it's David Blackmore from Blackmore Wagyu or the guys from Sure Wagyu or the guys from White Rocksville. I make it known that, I make it really important, not just me, but also my chefs actually know these guys. And we do get out into the farm and have a look and make them realise where things do come from. You know, I built Chiswick, which is my restaurant in Willara. I put a market garden on the side of it. It's not big. It's about 180 square metres on the side of the restaurant that we grow fruit and veg and herbs and bits and pieces. We obviously use it in the restaurant, but it's not big enough to supply the restaurant. The restaurant's, you know, 2,500 people a week. But why I did do it, because I wanted, apart from looking really pretty, I wanted the chefs to think about what is in season and what's not. And whatever we are growing, we actually are using in the restaurant. So, you know, I've got broad beans at the moment. I've just put radishes in, you know. We're just about to grow tomatoes. So that's when they start coming on, we know they're in season. That's when the chefs they have to think about, you know, what's on the menu and create recipes, you know, to the following.
We've got a tweet here from NRM North saying, how important are local food systems for food quality and sustainability? I suppose that ties into your market, your farmers market.
Farmers market, but also, you know, buying local when you can. You know, I'm not sure about Victoria and Melbourne. I'm sure some of you are from Sydney. But the actual explosion of farmers markets in Sydney and community gardens is massive. You know, I live in the Eastern Beaches, and just behind the beach near where I live, there's a massive community garden there now. And people respect it too, and they look after it. And I've just released a book 2 weeks ago, good timing, yeah, called Matt's Kitchen Garden, and it's all about, you know, kitchen gardens and community gardens and the amount of gardens that are being put into schools these days. I'm not fighting with anybody, but I've taken over the art gallery and I'm talking to the Botanical Trust, the gardens, of building a market garden with a couple of other chefs. The first comment I got was it was the land grab. And someone said, oh, you know, what will happen, you will have, you know, the homeless coming in and eating your stuff. And I was like, fantastic.
Yeah.
How great's that?
And we've got another one here. Do you see, this is from Frances O'Brien. She says, do you see a bigger future role for bush tucker in mainstream food culture?
Look, I'm, how do I put this? Foraging is a fantastic thing and a great thing, and we do a little bit of it. Bush tucker, to me, some of it is fantastic, some of it is rubbish, for me. And if it was that great, we'd be using a lot more of it. That's probably all I can say about it. Look, you know...
Well, a finger lime's a finger lime. You don't sell it as bush tucker, do you? It's just a great...
Yeah, it's a great... Well, it is. But there are some certain aspects of it which I don't really quite get, you know, and I don't use. But, you know, to go foraging and pick sandfire from the beach or beach bananas or, you know, finger limes and whatever, to me is Warrigal greens, you know.
So some work to do there.
Yeah, there is.
Well, Landcare is a brand. This is from me. I'm on Twitter, so I get to ask a question too. Landcare is a brand as much as MasterChef or ABC or Aria. It's a brand with positive connotations, wide recognition. Could it ever make it on a menu? Would you ever, if you had 2 people doing great veal, would you ever investigate it enough to go, yeah, but look what you're doing for the wildlife, look what you've done with salinity, look how many trees.
100%. 100%. You know, I think... you know, people care about it a lot more, you know, and so they should. And, you know, if you've got 2 veal farmers, one's doing the right thing by the land and by his animals, you're going to use him over the guy that's not, 100%. So yeah, it's you either whip that guy's bum or you don't use it, and then he goes out of business too.
How many chefs are out there making those one-on-one relationships and introductions? I mean,
a lot more than you think. Yeah. Strangely enough, most of the chefs in Australia are all great mates. You know, we all tend to get on. We all tend to hang out. And we're very competitive. There's no question. But you know, we learn off each other. You know, when it comes to cooking, it's all about inspiration and you know, seeing what someone else is doing. Not that you completely copy the person, but you obviously suck in inspiration for what they're doing, and then you create your own dishes. So, you know, we're always eating in each other's restaurant. Anyone that follows me on Twitter or Instagram, you'll realise my whole life is just based around pretty much food and where I'm going and what I'm eating next or what I've just eaten. You know, it's and obviously I've got to eat in my mate's restaurants. So.
And we've got one here from Kate Wilborn. What ingredient are you most excited about cooking with right now?
You know, that's a question I get asked a lot. I don't have a favourite ingredient, but at the moment in time, it's all about what is coming in season. You know, I'm a big believer in going, you know, and I often say to people, it's like when mangoes first come into season, mangoes are my favourite. You know, I just love them. It's my favourite food in the world. And then a couple of weeks later, cherries come in. Oh, I love cherries. And it's like, oh, and then there's peaches. And then there's bloody white peaches. So it's just a continual, you know, onslaught of produce that's coming in. You know, I was sitting in the garden at Chiswick yesterday and I just sat down, I just ate like a handful of broad beans. So maybe broad beans, there you go.
Broad beans, okay. Are there any questions on the floor? Okay, let's get that mic there. I've had the beans at Chiswick, they were...
Have you?
Yeah, it's like, I don't need to eat anything else, they were spectacular.
We had a rat there recently, actually. I shouldn't say that, but we did, we had a rat.
In the garden?
Yeah. And in the garden, yeah. And he was eating the bloody broad beans. He's gone now, we got him. Okay. But,
Thanks very much, Matt. That was very, very enlightening. Reg Kidd, I'm from your part of the world. I'm from Orange, and I spent the coldest night of my life ever at Black Springs, snowed in. But look, it is very, very enlightening. I'm involved with New South Wales farmers and education and training all my life, and we're really pushing in New South Wales sustainable food and fibre production and trying to getting it back into the national curriculum so young people at a young age learn about the importance of food, where it comes from, doing it sustainably, which will improve their diets and get them right through to being good land carers. We'd like to have you as our champion. So congratulations on what you've done this morning, and I think what you're doing is exactly what Landcare is about on the other end. Thanks, you.
Mate. I think just talking about that, you know, I think kids nowadays, and I see a lot of kids coming to the restaurants, you know, it's quite funny, you know, you might get a 14-year-old kid that has his birthday, and rather than having a party, he wants his parents to bring him to Aria. You know, that would never have happened in my day. I look at what my kids, and they're not... Fair enough, their father's a chef and owns restaurants. They don't want to follow my footsteps. They feel as though, you know, why should we have to when he can? But, you know, their knowledge of food, you know, is so much greater than what my generation was. An example, I went to a restaurant the other day, and I'm sort of dobbing myself in here at the same time. And the restaurant had mashed potato and gravy, and they had these soft buns. And I said to my partner, and the kids are sitting there, I said, God, you know, you dipped it into the mashed potato and gravy. I said, it's just like KFC. Both my kids looked at me and said, what are you talking about? They had no idea. They've never been.
Well, we got one up the back.
Not that I had either. Someone had told me. But
Yeah, you read about it.
Congratulations, Matt. I'm from Tasmania, and I was an organic farmer for 26 years, and I love the way that you're bringing ethics and politics together. The ethics issue seems to me to be something fairly new, because when I studied at East Sydney Tech, they told me in catering, at the catering college there, they told me that you didn't really have to worry about whether the vegetables were going to have any nutrition in them at all. You just had to produce something that was good looking and tasted terrific, and you'd be a success. Well, you've been a success, and you've come from Blacktown, so for that I...
Are you saying I'm not good looking?
Did I say that? No. I said that you had terrific balls, actually, for... Yeah, from coming from Blacktown and doing what you've done with such pizzazz. I also worked with Oliver Shaw at the Opera House restaurant. He had the contract there. Yeah. So I feel like I've met my tribe when I listen to you. But what I'm really interested in is how does a boy from Blacktown use the skills of being on the street to do what you've done?
You know, I never set out to do what I've done now. I can honestly say that, you know, my father made me work from a very young age and gave me a very good work ethic. I was a little bit naughty when I was at school, and I found a place, and it's a bizarre thing because my father used to come pick me up every night from Blacktown, from Roseville at midnight. And when I first started, and I had a 3-day trial there, and I got in the car and I said, "Dad, you would not believe what they do with food." And it was little things. It was little things like a fan strawberry. You know, like I'd just never seen things like that before. And I know in those 3 days, I instantly fell in love with something. And it was cooking. And, you know, back in those days too, 30 years ago, you know, there was no such thing as a celebrity chef working for an airline or cookbooks, or, you know, whoever owned the restaurants back in those days were the business guys, and the chefs were hidden out the back. So I never did it on that premise of, oh yeah, one day I could be famous. You know, I did it because I fell in love with it. And I think that's a big difference with a lot of young chefs now coming into the industry. They're doing it. It's great that it's been exposed because it's opened it up for a lot more people. But at the same time, it's, you know, people are getting into it for the wrong reasons. You know, I remember there was a young girl from MasterChef that I mentored from Series 1, and she said to me, she said, "Matt, how long is it going to take me to learn everything?" I just looked at her and laughed. And I said, "Sweetheart, I've been doing it for 25 years and I know nothing." You know, you never stop learning. You never stop learning. And that's the great thing about our industry, I think. You know, you can be inspired, you know, every day of the year by, you know, walking into another restaurant or another market, or, you know, I was in Adelaide last week, you know, walking around their markets, thinking, God, why don't we have one of these in Sydney first off? And there was a great organic store there too. And anyone here from Adelaide? Yeah, there's a guy in the markets there that just, and everything is numbered, so you know it's all legit, and he's a lovely guy too. Best oranges. But yeah, I've lost my train of thought then.
We've got a question up the back here.
Jimmy Cocking from the Arid Lands Environment Centre in Alice Springs. Thanks, Matt. Really great to hear all the work you're doing. I'm really interested because all this talk has been about the front end of the restaurant as far as food and all that sort of stuff. And the restaurant industry and the food industry is also one of a high methane producer in terms of food waste going to landfill. Yeah. Is there much going on in the restaurant and food industry around composting and making sure that that waste is being done? And if not, is there work that can be done in terms of making it a systemic or systematic process?
Look, there is a lot more work that can be done. There's no question whatsoever. But, you know, a lot of people are changing their views. You know, we've got a great ambassador, a guy called Matt Stone. He's a young chef from Perth, and he's pushing it, you know, a lot more than probably anybody else. People are aware of it. People are, you know, doing more and more to help the situation. It's something that, you know, we're very conscious of, and we probably need to do. I'm probably guilty of it. I probably need to do more of it. But I'm going to go away from this now and work on it even more. You've brought it to my attention.
We've got a question just down here.
Thanks very much, Matt. I'm Sandra McPhee from the Neerim District Landcare Group. I work with farmers on the ground, fencing off their creeks and revegetating wet areas and eroded areas on their farms, and many of them value add and grow beef and dairy area. I was just wondering, you spoke about your dad's farm and the beef and the sheep that you produce there. Do you have creeks on the property? Do you have someone working with your dad?
Yeah, we do. We do. We actually, it's the old, where the farm is in Rockley. It's the old Lachlan Road, which is the old road from Bathurst to Dubbo. So it goes right through. Obviously, we use the land now, so it's got a tree-lined road all the way through, which is, you know, no one has access to it because both ends have been cut off it. But yeah, look, my father is a very modern-day farmer. you know, we're partners in the farm. He's at the age now is where all he wants to do is produce the best product he possibly can. I'm a little bit more commercial than what he is, hence why we started Moran's Lamb and we saw that into Sydney. But yeah, he's, you know, he cares about the land, he cares about his farming, he cares about his animals. And, you know, I remember as a young kid being on the farm with, you know, dogs and bloody going everywhere, and none of that happens anymore. And the difference from when I was young and seeing, you know, that cattle were a lot wilder than what they are now is where now you can virtually just walk up and give them a pat, which, as we all know, produces a much better product at the end. You know, anything that's not stress related is going to you know, one, live a much better life, and two, eat a lot better.
And we've got a question way up the back there, Matt.
Yep. Hello. Hi. I'm just really interested in farmers markets and the push that there is at the moment, and as a producer, trying to fit that into an already very hectic, I guess, farm schedule, and then trying to take your product to the public. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on other direct marketing that aren't so labour intensive and that the food industry is interested in, like websites, food co-ops, things like that? Yeah,
look, there's more stuff done online. You know, I was with a biodynamic vegetable farmer in WA filming a couple of months ago, and apart from being the best vegetables I've ever seen in my life, you know, this guy had marketed himself incredibly well online, and he was doing up just organic boxes every week, and whatever he was growing is what was in them, and he'd just drop them at drop-off points. So he didn't home deliver them, but he would, you know, make friends with the local doctor in wherever it was, Yellingup or whatever, and he would actually, that would be his central drop-off place. So you'd order it, and there'd be 50 people in the area. You'd drop it off at that one place. You'd give the doctor an extra free box, and they'd come and pick it up every Friday night or whatever else. And his business was absolutely booming. It was just going nuts. Farmers markets, you say, it takes a lot of time, but I think it's well worth it.
But that people want to meet the farmer, not the farmers off-cider, don't they, at farmers markets?
They do. And, you know, Byron Bay have set a great example. Unless you are the farmer, you can't be there, which I think is really important.
And so the rules are a bit slack in some places.
In some they are, yeah. No, we did some filming in last series. By the way, Paddock to Plate is on air at the moment, yeah, every Wednesday night at 8:30 on Lifestyle Foxtel. You get the repeats on Sunday night at 6:30. I just thought I'd let you know that.
And Landline's on Sundays at noon and repeated at 1. I raise you.
You know, I remember Mao and Lola were you know, in their 70s, and they were organic potato farmers in Dalesford. And they were just the most beautiful, beautiful people. And when the researchers were asking them, you know, can we come and film on a Saturday? And Lola was like, no. And it's like, well, why? She said, well, that's market day. We've got to be at the markets. What are people going to do for their potatoes for the week? And she was so passionate and cared so much about the local community and whether they were eating potatoes that week or not. So we had to film on a Monday, I think it was. And there's 2 70-year-olds digging potatoes out of the ground.
Oh, that's lovely. We've got a question up the back here.
Hi, Matt. Jennifer Jeremick from Western New South Wales, between Cobar and Broken Hill. My question is, what do you recommend for station managers in the outback or farmers in the outback that they can do to bridge the gap between them and the consumer? There are no farmers markets anywhere near us, but we're desperate to build relationships with our consumers.
Yeah, that's, you're a long way out too.
Tricky one to finish up.
It is a tricky one to finish up with. Look, you know, I suppose, you know, to try and get people out to you and you into the people. Is that an invitation? You know, I've been to Cobar. It was a bloody long time ago, though. Yeah, I suppose, you know, trying to make that connection with you know, chefs and restaurateurs. You know, get them out and show them what you're doing. What are you growing? What have you got? Cattle. Yeah. You know, try to make the connection with the guys, with the industry or my industry. Marketing, I think, plays a big part. Do you kill yourself and sell yourself, or you just sell to the market? So you've got to sell to those other guys.
If that's an option, or if that's part of building a relationship with the consumer, we look to getting into that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, there's so many more people who are doing it, you know, and...
Moran's lamb outback.
Moran's lamb outback, there you go.
Outback lamb.
Outback lamb. I did a story just recently on the Eyre Peninsula on Dorper lamb, and it was 41 degrees. We trashed 3 cars getting there. And the Dorper lamb, geez, they're a strange breed. I think they're goats. Anyway. Any Dorper farmers here?
Yeah.
We actually had Dorper for a little while.
I think we've got time for one more question. We're getting the wind up, but okay, over here.
Hi there, Matt. I'm Laurie from Ocean Watch. Thanks for your talk today. We work with sustainable seafood around Australia and work with guys like John Sussman.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. We love your paddock to plate, and I'm just wondering if I can tempt you to make a similar program called From the Tide to the Table, and maybe champion some of us great seafood industry personnel.
From the tide to the table, I had someone recently say, what about the farm to the fork? Look, it's only a certain amount of days in the week and weeks in the year. But, you know, I know that, you know, whatever my TV career is now, it is all about what I'm doing. You know, we haven't decided whether we'll do a third paddock to plate. I might do a bit of a spin-off. But yeah, it'll be in the same sort of vein as where, to me, it's more integrity, credibility, and it's showcasing, you know, not just this amazing country, you know, for its scenery. And a lot of paddock to plate is about the scenery, but showcasing the incredible producers that we have and how passionate they are. And it's not all about money and fame. It's about you know, what they love doing.
Well, Matt, thank you very, very much. It's been wonderful to hear from you and hear your story. And one day, might we see a little Landcare Square on some of your menus?
You never know, Pip, you never know.
An Outback Moran lamb?
Outback Moran lamb.
Well, we'll just get the business people talking now. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Matt Moran. Thanks, Matt. Thank you.